So if you're in the room and you just wanted to chat, what you're looking for, or feel free to vocalize it, the format will, Dan, Gora, they're listed in top left probably of your kind of like your viewing panel. He is our guest speaker for today, and he is joining us all the way from Western Europe, or not, maybe Western Europe, Eastern Europe today. Where are you at these days, or do you want to tell?
Scotland. I'm based in Scotland at the moment.
Scotland, that's right.
Yeah. A couple of days ago in Central Europe and Germany, but no, back in the bad weather, essentially.
Dan and I have known each other for a while, and he's been gracious enough to be our speaker for today. He's going to do something more resemblant of kind of like a flash talk, where he's going to, just tell you how to get started really quick, in terms of logistics, and then also, just dive into exemplifying some of the OWASP top 10. If you're not familiar with the OWASP top 10, go to OWASP.org, go to projects, and then look at the OWASP top 10, which is a top 10 application security risks that have been denoted by the organization to affect web applications. And so the Juice Shop is a great way to learn if you haven't done any sort of like adversarial application pen testing. It's kind of like a self-paced platform that allows you to learn and gives you some hints. So it's not frustrating. It has a lot of feedback loops and built into the product. But I just wanted to welcome those of you joining us, and also welcome Jason. Thanks, Guled. I'm joined here with Guled and Zakia, co-Atlanta leads for the OWASP Atlanta chapter. So we're here to get your thoughts, your ideas, your feedback. If you're interested in doing a talk, please let us know. If you want to contribute and support the OWASP Atlanta chapter, then please go to OWASP.org, and you can go to the donate page, and you can set aside, especially if you like this talk, no pressure, Dan. If you like this talk, then please support the chapter to grow and to support future endeavors, future efforts in recruiting speakers, hosting events. Hopefully, we'll go back to in-person meetings at some point soon. So I think it's 6:30 right now by my watch. So what do you say we get things started, Dan?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to go straight in?
Yeah, let's go ahead and maybe just 30 seconds about your background, what you like to do, etc., and then straight to the good stuff. So Dan, Gora, everybody.
Thank you. Let me just see how I can share my screen, because I could just do that. Participants.
I don't know, sharing rights have been delegated, Guled?
Because I can't see it anymore.
Yes, sir. You should have the ability to share your screen.
Let me just check. Seems like it just disappeared, but I should be able. Can you just scroll? Yeah, perfect. Now I have the one.
Cool.
All right, let me just share my screen, and then we can get started. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, you're good to go.
Perfect, great. So first of all, thank you everybody for joining today's session on the OWASP Juice Shop. And my name is Dan Gora, and in the upcoming minutes, we'll be showing you an introduction and hands-on hacking session using the OWASP Juice Shop. And that will include some really interesting vulnerabilities around the OWASP top 10, such as code injection, cross-site scripting, and also sensitive data exposure. My name is Dan Gora. I'm currently a cloud security engineering lead at CloudReach in the UK. As part of my work, I focus mostly around DevSecOps, including application security, basically mostly for cloud-based applications, and also in multi and hybrid cloud environments. Apart from that, I'm also a contributing member to the German OWASP community, so co-leading the OWASP Frankfurt meetup, as well as being involved with some projects, including the Juice Shop and other projects within the OWASP community. Also, if you have any questions around the Juice Shop or the OWASP community itself or anything else, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or just contact me on Twitter via my Twitter account, DanSecOps. So what we are discussing or showing you today is giving a brief overview of the Juice Shop, the purpose of the project, which I think is really cool to demonstrate. In the next step, we are going to do an installation of the Juice Shop on a Docker container. There's also a couple of other ways showing this quickly, but focusing on the local Docker installation. And then afterwards, we're going to be diving straight in and showing you a couple of interesting challenges, as mentioned, about code injection and cross-site scripting. And then showing you how to actually see also the vulnerable code within the application. So sort of seeing how you can learn application security using the Juice Shop. And afterward, we're going to sum this up quickly and ask you to go ahead and just try out the Juice Shop yourself. And I'll be posting the link in the second then. So what is the OWASP Juice Shop project? Now, the OWASP Juice Shop itself claims to be as probably the most modern and sophisticated insecure web application. It's in essence an application security training platform that can be deployed as part of a security training environment. So, for example, if you want to showcase an insecure web application for your developers, but also if you want to have a tool that you can sacrifice as a security tool guinea pig, the Juice Shop is really good example for that. For itself, the Juice Shop is an OWASP flagship tool project, and it's been actively maintained by a couple of really strong contributors in the community. And currently it's available in over 37 languages. So it's quite a lot of languages available. And if you feel like you want to add your language to the Juice Shop, feel free to go ahead and open a pull request on GitHub. And everything about the Juice Shop itself is open source and it's available on GitHub. So if you want to look under the hood of how the Juice Shop is built, feel free to go on GitHub page. And also there's all information about installation instructions available there. Now, let's focus now on the practical part on how to get installed first. And then afterwards, we're going to be showing you a couple of hands-on hacking challenges. So the first thing, if you probably know it, is going to the OWASP.org page. And if you hover over to projects, you can find under the OWASP top 10 and the dependency track, the Juice Shop. So you can see it's already quite a major project within the OWASP project realm. Click on that and you'll be forwarded to the OWASP Juice Shop overview page that gives you some interesting information, useful information on how to set it up, including the purpose, some testimonials, things around challenges, CTF, and so on. And most important, what we want to focus on for now is the installation itself. And for that, you should preferably go to the GitHub page. So go under sources, click on GitHub. And this will forward you to the Juice Shop GitHub page. And this has been actually actively maintained by Björn Kimmich, who is the main maintainer and author of the Juice Shop. And if you have any deep technical questions around what's under the hood or any feature requests, reach out to Björn Kimmich himself and ask him. Like, he's usually very active on Slack, on the OWASP Slack. And now let's just focus on the installation. If we're going to the table of contents, we're just going to focus on the setup. Now, there's a couple of ways just to set it up, as mentioned briefly. We have either just deployed directly from source or via your cloud instance of choice, EC2, Azure Container, or Google Cloud. However, what usually we would recommend just to get started, especially if you just want to learn application security training and want to do it in a safe environment, the Docker container is usually the way to go to get started. It's actually pretty straightforward. The only thing you need is to install Docker locally on your machine and just pull the Björn Kim, like the Juice Shop container image from the Docker Hub registry, and then run this locally on port 3000. Pretty straightforward. It will take roughly like 10 to 15 seconds in order to download this. And after you've done that, you can browse to localhost 3000 in order to access the application. One quick interesting fact I just want to highlight on the Docker container is that there's over 31 million pulls of the Juice Shop, which I consider quite a lot for an OWASP container image. So somebody really likes using the Juice Shop or is deploying this en masse somewhere. So it also seems to be quite a popular project in itself. Now, I've done this already locally. I've just deployed this on my machine. And if we now go back to localhost 3000, we'll be presented with the Juice Shop overview. And in itself, it looks like a pretty straightforward web shop. There is some products you can buy, apple juice. You can even buy an anniversary celebration ticket, some banana juice, and things like that. So it's a pretty normal setup for a web shop. You have some customer feedback, some about us. You have an account. You can log in or register as a user. And again, over 35 or 37 languages to choose from. Now, we've just seen now how we installed it. But what we want to focus on now is the more juicy part of that, and it's the challenges around the OWASP top 10. And for that, let's just head back quickly to the OWASP Juice Shop page. And in the description, I mean, there's a couple of things around what the Juice Shop is written, but one important thing is that the hacking progress itself is tracked on the scoreboard. And finding the scoreboard in itself is actually one of the easy challenges. And that's what we're going to focus now on, how to find this hidden scoreboard in the application. Now, what we could do is now install OWASP Zap or burp proxy just to do some iteration on the page, some reconnaissance. However, for that particular challenge, and for quite a few challenges on the Juice Shop, you don't even need that. The only thing you need is your local browser inspector tools. So what I usually do first is just open the inspect tool and going to the console, going to the debugger and looking around the source code of the application. So we can do some information reconnaissance, just clicking through the page and just reading some comments. But usually we want to really dive in and look at the source code and see if there's any hidden information that could lead us to a hidden page. Now, this is a bit messy, so let's just pretty print this for a second. Just going to drag this a bit to the left. And this will reveal the main entry point into the application. So your JavaScript that is being attached to that single page application. Now going down, we see it's quite a big file, so almost 20,000. And to be honest, no way in the world I'm going to read through 20,000 lines of code in order to find a hidden page. However, what we can do is just trying to look for anything that sounds like score or scoreboard. And I can always see, but just looking for a score, that is actually some hidden, well, you know, some code available that refers to something like scoreboard. And going further, there's even like some selectors that are doing scoreboard. I'm going to do a dash now and see there is a JavaScript selector for apps-score-board, which already looks something that we could use. However, going a bit further, we can see something, we see a path. And now just looking at the path up there, we can do a search path, we can do a logging, we have a register path. So basically that's how single page applications work. And also we have a path that is called score-board. Now, that's something we can now make an educated guess and think like, okay, if there's a path register or path search, why not a path scoreboard? And let's try that. Let's see what's going to happen. And yeah, looks like we've just solved our first challenge inside the Juice Shop. What you've just seen was a good example of what we consider sensitive data exposure. So essentially, a developer left or forgot just to exclude the path selector in the source code and just assume that if it's not displayed on the page, nobody will find it. But actually, this showed us that we can find it just by looking through the source code and making an educated guess. And that's something I've seen quite commonly also in penetration testing as well as vulnerability assessments, that developers just leave like empty admin pages or some upload functionalities inside the application. So that's quite an important vulnerability. Now, I want you to focus now on the scoreboard itself, because this is a really good example of an application security training platform. The scoreboard itself has a couple of, includes an overview of all the challenges. So we have 6 levels, and those 6 levels include over 100 challenges in total. So quite a few challenges for you to try out. And all the challenges are sorted by OWASP top 10 vulnerability. So from broken access control, over cryptographic issues, code injection, cross-site scripting, and so on. Now, the other good, interesting bit on the Juice Shop overview page, this injection, is that you can even dive into the source code itself. So if you, for example, go on our case outdated allow list, you can just load the corresponding code snippet and see the vulnerable lines of code that is associated with that respective challenge. However, we don't want to cheat, so let's first focus on solving the challenge and then looking at the vulnerable code after. Now, let's start with the most critical OWASP top 10 vulnerability, and that is what we consider the code injection or vulnerability, top 1 of OWASP, top 10 in 2017. Now, the first challenge, in total we have 4 challenges, but the first challenge we're going to focus on is on login with vendor's user account. Now, we don't have much information available apart from login with a user account. So looking around on the page, we just want to do some basic information reconnaissance and see if we can find something that we could use in order to log in. Now, looking around, we can find, for example, the banana juice product description and look at the reviews. And looks like a vendor at juice-sa shop has said that he also likes fried banana juice. And that's something actually we can just use as an advantage for our attack, or just gain essential information reconnaissance by just using that email account. So let's just copy that and try to log in with that email account. Now, of course, we don't have the password yet. So there's 2 options. Well, there's a couple of options, but one of the options is just going brute force through a password list and trying to find the easiest or the password that is being actually used. However, what we're going to focus on is a code injection attack. And that is actually much easier in that case. Now, what we're going to do first is, with any code injection attack, is just to pass in an unexpected input value into the field. In our case, we're going to have an email field and adding a backtick. So a backtick itself can be used as by, for example, SQL injection in order to modify the statement. Now, before I hit log me in, let's go on the console and see what's going to happen. Looks like by just triggering the backtick, we solved another challenge inside the Juice Shop. And that's actually the error handling challenge. So what we've just done was provoking an unexpected error within the application that was not really consistently handled on the backend. Now, looking at the console output, we can go to the response, and just going to make this, enhance this a bit here. We can actually see some really juicy information that is coming back from the server, including an error message that includes an object where we can see a SQL statement. And if we look very closely, we can see the backtick here that we have inserted on the left. So from this one, we can make an educated guess that we could potentially circumvent the authentication process by just commenting out the right part of the SQL statement and log ourselves in using a code injection attack. Now let's try this. See what's going to happen. What we're going to do now is adding the backtick and just dash to comment out the remaining code. Now I want you to think in a second what's going to happen now. All right, let's try. And looks like, let me just close that. We have just solved our second or third challenge actually inside the Juice Shop. Now, with this example, we've been able to perform a code injection attack by just commenting out the rest of the SQL statement and circumventing the authentication process. Now, being logged in, you can just see that here, vendor Juice Shop, we can actually even access more information that could be potentially used against that user, such as accessing the order history. In that case, okay, he hasn't ordered much, but if we go, for example, on the payment options, we can see that he's actually left a credit card that we as an attacker could potentially abuse just to order something for our purposes, or just probably even access that in clear text if we find out how to access that. Now, let's log out and step up the challenge, because in its essence, there is another way to log in or to perform a code injection attack and log in even with escalated privileges. Now, going back to the statement that we've just seen, just insert a password. We can now make an educated guess that we don't even need to include an email. So going back on the statement, that we don't even need to include an email, because we could potentially just say, let's just select the first user of the database and log in with that. And that's something we can just use the or statement, or equals 111, 1 equals 1, and then comment out the rest of the statement. So again, this will just remove or disable the second part of the actual password check. Now I want you to think, what's going to happen? Who are we going to log in as? Let's try. And looks like we just solved another challenge inside the Juice Shop. And who are we going to log in? As the admin of the Juice Shop. So you might wonder, why is that? So coincidentally, the first user of the database that has been selected was the admin user. So without even knowing the admin login, we were just able to select that user and log in with that by using the same code injection technique to circumvent the broken authentication. So this also at the side now allows us to escalate privileges within the application, because now we might have access to more potentially elevated privileges inside the application, like creating users, deleting users, or even resetting passwords. So something quite critical. Now, going back on the scoreboard, we've seen that now we've solved those two challenges. And I want you to focus for a moment now on the security training aspect, because we just seen that this is really cool way just to solve the challenge. But as a developer, you might ask, like, what's in for me? I want to understand what's going on in the background. And for this one, you can actually click on, after you solve, or even before you solve the challenge, on the code snippet. And this will actually load the corresponding code snippet of the Juice Shop and show you, if you scroll down here, the vulnerable lines of code, which is line 15. So what we can see here is that the request of the email is not being parameterized, but just being parsed without any sanitization directly into the function, which then means that we can essentially break the statement by just adding our own SQL code in there. So that's one good thing, just to learn from the developer perspective. And at the same time, you might want to know, okay, how can I prevent this? And for this one, you can actually click on the star, on the shield, and this will forward you to the OWASP cheat sheet series, in that particular case for the SQL injection prevention. So just looking around, it will just give you some information on how to use this. So you can also use this as part of your security training strategy. Now, let's focus on another attack. And in this case, we want to focus on one major attack that's been relevant for the past 20 years, even longer, is what we call the cross-site scripting attack. Now, the cross-site scripting challenge, well, there's a couple of cross-site scripting challenges available in the Juice Shop, from API-only cross-site scripting around content security bypassing, client-side cross-site scripting protection, DOM-based, reflected and stored. Everything is there, what you want to exploit and want to know in terms of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. One particular vulnerability or challenge I want to highlight is the DOM-based cross-site scripting challenge, because with DOM-based cross-site scripting, you can usually install or you can perform malicious actions on the client side of the user without the server noticing that. And for example, install a keylogger or steal a session token as part of that attack. So let's just demonstrate that by solving the DOM-based cross-site scripting challenge. Now, we can perform the attack by just copying the payload here, which is an iframe that just pops up an alert box. Maybe not very spectacular, but let's just try that for now. And look around the page as a potential sink for that. Now, let's find the search bar. For example, when we just look for an apple, you can see this is actually being reflected here. Okay, so how about we just try in a HTML statement and see what's coming back. Looks like, just going on inspect, that the header parameters or the tags that we passed in have been actually reflected by the application. So we can now make an educated guess that this is a potential sink for our cross-site scripting vulnerability. Now, let's just try this. Include our payload just to trigger an iframe with a JavaScript alert and see what's going to happen. And yes, looks like we've just solved another challenge inside the Juice Shop. And this is also a classical example of a DOM-based cross-site scripting attack, where we just essentially included up here in the query of the search bar a malicious JavaScript code snippet that just popped up an alert box. It's also quite important because a lot of applications that I've seen, I've worked with, had this included. And yes, the thing is usually what you do is just popping up an alert box. What we want to focus on now is actually how far you can take this, because this is actually quite important in order to steal credentials or to access the session token. Now, let's step up the challenge now. And for that, I would like to show you a really cool challenge, an extended challenge of the Juice Shop that has been created by another co-author of the Juice Shop, which is Timo Page, and he's known on GitHub as Wurstbrot. And he has created a shake logger challenge that will install a keylogger apart from some other code that is playing some music in the background and some other things. But for now, it really is a good example of showing how far we can take this. Now, what we need to do is just assuming that we are a user of the Juice Shop and we've been ordering a lot of juice, we've been ordering a lot of bananas, maybe even a ticket, or we want a couple of things already. And for some reason, we are getting a personal email by the CEO of the Juice Shop and tell us that we've just won a big lottery, even though we have not participated in. And he's asking us to click on the total inconspicuous link to claim our prize. I mean, of course, as a user of the Juice Shop, you can't say no. Like, I want the prize. Now, hovering over that, you can see that actually the link itself is using the same mechanism. It's using the search bar and is also including a cross-site scripting statement. Now, let's just click on this and see what's going to happen. Now, if we now right-click on the inspect toolset, we can see in the debugger that on localhost port 8080, we have installed the shake.js file. Now, let me just log out first and show you. So one thing it will do is just shaking as part of the challenge, shaking the images. But another important part is really this shake.js logger that has been installed as part of the cross-site scripting attack that is sending keystrokes to another server, or in our case, to another port locally on localhost 8080. Now, let's think that, okay, we've just logged in, we want to claim our prize. Of course, I have to log in my account, provide my credentials, go and then gora.owasp.org and log in with my super secret credentials and make some purchase now. What we can see on the other side is that we have now on port 8080 a keylogger installed, or the attacker has a keylogger installed, and it's going to send all the credentials that we just inserted to that server. In our case, I'm just going to extend this. We can see that Gora, I have the user account I've inserted and my password here in clear text, as well as the continue code. And if I keep logging in, you will also see the access session token that you can just use in order to log in. So just to reiterate, this is also really classical example of the cross-site scripting attack in order to steal session tokens or just grab credentials by installing a keylogger. And for that one, you can also find on the Juice Shop page the affecting code snippet for that, which is available under cross-site scripting. Yep. In that case, it's just line number 6 of the filter table, which is using the insecure bypass security trust HTML method. So also a classic example of a method you should not use, particularly if you want to avoid cross-site scripting. Now, we've seen now a couple of really interesting challenges around the OWASP top 10, like one is the cross-site scripting, code injection, as well as even broken access control, and also sensitive data exposure. Now, let's hop back to the slides for a second and sum up what we've just seen. So what you've just seen right now was a really good example of the Juice Shop as a self-training platform for penetration testers, for developers, or for security enthusiasts and professionals who want to learn more about how to exploit a vulnerability, but also understand on actually how to mitigate this and find the identifying code snippet using OWASP material like the cheat sheet, the OWASP top 10, and the Juice Shop. We've been also checking out how to install it. So you can install it locally on your Docker machine, as well as using a cloud instance of choice. And as part of that, we've stepped through a couple of cool challenges inside the Juice Shop, such as how to access a scoreboard through finding hidden information inside the web page, then code injection through SQL injection to get logging to a regular user and even the admin user. And finally, we've been able to perform a cross-site scripting attack in order to just pop up an alert box, but also install a keylogger in order to grab the credentials of an authenticated user. Now, I challenge you to try it out yourself. Go on the project page on owasp.org. I'm going to post this in a second in the chat. And try out to install the Juice Shop, to download the Docker container, and run it on local port 3000 as described, and try to find your scoreboard yourself. Try to understand the source code, log in, and maybe you've been just checking out a couple of other challenges. Try the code injection challenge or cross-site scripting. And also let us know if you enjoyed using the Juice Shop. Maybe you've been using it for other purposes. I'm going to post this in a second here. And also note is that you can also use the Juice Shop as a capture the flag platform. So that's also part of that. There's a couple of more documentation on the OWASP Juice Shop demo book that I'm going to post, which tells you on how to set this up. And also, if you don't want to install container, if you don't have Docker installed, you can also use the online demo, the juiceshop.herokuapp.com. Just be aware this is a shared instance, so you usually wouldn't expect us to do like any attacks related to malware or operating system code injection. They are usually disabled, but it's just good just to showcase to get started. Great, that's been from my side. I'm happy to answer any questions and yeah, any comments about Juice Shop.
Appreciate it, Dan. Much appreciated for your time. If there are any questions, please go ahead and unmute your mic and you can go ahead and fire away. Highly suggest that you go ahead and do that if you're just getting familiar with the Juice Shop, or if you wanted to get some advice on how to use or how to leverage. So anybody have any questions out there?
Hey, Dan, it's Wardell. Thanks for the demo. I think it's going to be very useful for me to use in presentations to potential clients. I think that's going to be pretty cool. It's probably going to scare the heck out of them.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, well, good to hear that it's been useful for you. And I think it's just that it can also be installed as a self-training platform, as a capture the flag environment, or even as a guinea pig for your security tooling. So there's a lot of options you have, and depending on the purpose, you can use the Juice Shop respectively.
Explain the capture the flag feature of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so let me just show you quickly, because there is some documentation on the capture the flag one. And it's basically, you have to parse in a flag when you install the Docker container. So that's been documenting on, let me just see, I think the hosting a capture the flag exercise. I'm just going to post this in the channel. It will just walk you through actually hosting the CTF event in itself, but then also explain you how to run the Juice Shop in CTF mode. So you have to set, as part of that, I think there's even a separate GitHub repository to do that. And you have to set a certain flag inside the environment and run this then as part of the CTF mode. There's also some further information available on the infrastructure. So usually we'd have a score server, so the scoreboard you've just seen. And then you have different instances that actually access that scoreboard server. And it's, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It just depends on your purposes. You can scale this up pretty easily from like only a couple of instances each, even running locally, one container each, or just doing this even in the cloud if you want to have like 50 servers or applications running at the same time.
All right,
Does this
great.
answer your question? Yep.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Dan, on behalf of OWASP Atlanta, we really appreciate your time, and we'll be sure to make sure that if you want to follow Dan, please take note. This Zoom call will end, so all the notes and all the stuff that he shared on the chat will go away. And there it is. Yep, there's Dan's Twitter handle. Again, please consider joining the OWASP as a formal member. Don't just be a freeloader, but be a contributor. And most importantly, if you have some time and effort, feel free to join a chapter, contribute as an editor, as a writer, as a coder, as an engineer. It's just simply a thought leader, depending on your background. There's never a threshold of experience that is needed. There's always a role for everybody. So thanks again, Dan, on behalf of OWASP Atlanta, and we wish you well, and we wish everyone attending well as well. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me.